Once again, David, thanks very much for joining us once more.
Good morning, Fazir. May I say you have a new portfolio? My campaign manager for re-election in 2019.
Clearly, I'm doing it for free, by the way. But anyway,
such good spin doctors in this country.
I mean, we could spend a lot of time going into that.
We have no time for that.
But let's deal with a number of issues that would have come out of the discussion we had last week. But before we get to that, what perspective do you offer to this new deal that is being talked about, and the reports that what was offered on Saturday of last week was rejected by the Pro League clubs?
Fazir, I just want to go into a bit of history before we get into that. And as I said in last week's program, the Pro League has been under tremendous pressure for the last year and a half, 2 years. I mentioned the fortunes of the national team directly impacted. The Trinidad and Tobago Football Association in 2017 granted the Pro League $200,000 to help stabilize the league. No conditions attached. They accepted it wholeheartedly. They were glad for it. I, as president, took a lot of flack for that, saying I have a vested interest because I have a Team W connection in the Pro League. I did not get board approval and so on. Fast forward to this current situation that we have here. We all knew the story about the collapse of the T-League. The TTFA appointed a commission, which was appointed by the board, and might I say, unanimously appointed by the board. The vote went 12-0 in terms of the members who were appointed to that commission. And that commission was elected an independent chairman, not an independent chairman, a chairman of their own, who they choose from, who was Selby Brown. And in the application, the FIFA forward application to FIFA by the TTFA, specifically outlined, and the statement of approval that came back was clearly to say for the helping of payment of administrative costs, salaries for players, and so on. We all know for the last 2 years, Fazir Mohammed, that there have been a lot of talk bandied about in the public domain of players not getting paid.
Correct.
Right? And it's all over the media and all that stuff like that. Then government had stepped in and saying, well, we are not going to give this subvention because unless they have certain things, proof that you have paid your players and so on. It is well bandied about in the public domain. So at the check presentation, it was last week and so on, 2 clubs, I'm not going to call their name, were not given their checks, although the checks were presented. And the 2 clubs had to prove that they had paid their players the outstanding.
Central FC was one of those clubs.
Central FC was one of those clubs, but you call the name,
yeah,
right?
But it's a fact. I mean,
it's a fact. It's a fact.
It's
okay,
statement of fact.
And it was outlined that they had letters from these players that they had not been paid. So, in the scheme of things, the TTFA, through its commission, saw it fit that, listen, we need to bring back some stability and confidence in this league. First and foremost, the players are the most important things in this league, so that we want to ensure, we suggested that, listen, let us pool all the money and put it into one account. Not a TTFA account, not a Pro League account. I, as president of the TTFA, attended the meeting and says, since you're saying so much a controversy with the Pro League, so let us put into a lawyer's client account to be managed. All the TTFA said is that we would be a signatory to the account. We never said that we were
Doesn't that give you control?
No, we would be a signatory, one of the signatories to the account, to ensure, because we said that one of the things we will want to see the league do is that all the players' contracts will be sent by the clubs to the league. If you have $50,000 a month to pay your players, the league will pay these players under an oversight from the TTFA that the players will get paid. That's one of the only stipulations that the TTFA said, and that is in keeping with what government wanted to ensure that the players got paid in what was stated in the statement of approval for the FIFA forward funds. That is no control for zero. We were bringing back some stability to the league. The TTFA also said that we will pay all the transport for all these teams because that's one of another difficult costs that is operating. That is not control for zero. So when I see that in the newspaper that the TT Pro League rejected. Let me tell you what happened in that meeting. It was attended by 9 Pro League clubs. 9 Pro League clubs. The chairman, the acting chairman of the Pro League, walked out of the meeting saying that his clubs have changed on him to what he was doing. The rest of Pro League clubs sat in that meeting, went through that MOU, line by line, saying what they wanted change. The next thing you know, there's a meeting called by the acting chairman of the Pro League, right, saying, to try to spin it around, and up comes a gentleman saying, well, I got sponsor the Pro League, you understand, forget that TTFA money. That is the story that we have going on in Trinidad and Tobago football. But in this country, you know what happens? Who gets it in the media first? And who gets the most hits? That's what's happening in this country.
So just for because it's important that we clarify, because if I could read the Ian Prescott story here, a bit of it, where he said that TT Pro League clubs rejected those proposals when meeting a few days ago, which would have been Saturday.
Yes, but that is after the meeting.
Right.
That is after the meeting with the TTFA Commission and the Pro League clubs.
So at that actual meeting with the TTFA, there was no rejection at that.
There was no rejection for zero. The chairman,
that came subsequently.
Yes, the chairman walked out of the meeting indicating that his members were changing on him by accepting this proposal. The members of the TT Pro League who were present in that meeting, Fazir, went through the agreement line by line, and it was then sent back to the Pro League clubs for ratification. The next thing you know is that the Pro League clubs were having a meeting in Port of Spain, called by the chairman, to put a spin on this whole thing. The vote went 5-5, and I make no apologies for what I say here this morning because I'm saying the truth. San Juan Jablote member voted against the wishes of his board.
You know that for a fact?
I know that for a fact, Fazir. I know that for a fact. And if you don't believe me, call Jerry Hospitales. And Jerry Hospitales had to turn around and said, this is the position of San Juan Jablote. I am not trying to throw anybody under the bus. I am going to talk the truth. And the problem with the truth in this country is that it must some people con. And at the end of the day, the acting chairman of the Pro League, right, took a strong position to object to the TTFA deal.
So where are we at with this right now? Because again, just to finish off on that line I was reading from Ian Prescott, he says, similarly, the TT Super League also voted to remain independent by rejecting a similar proposal, which would have seen them grouped in a Pro League second division under TTFA control.
Fazir, again, the TT Pro League came with a proposal to the TTFA. The TTFA didn't go to the Pro League and say, you have to do this, you know. They came with a proposal to invite teams to form a second division, right? The two proposals that were to be considered by the TTFA Commission was one, whether ascension and a second round of ascension will be run, or to consider the Pro League proposal to the TTFA, which were to invite teams from the second division. I can't see how the TTFA come into this, that the Super League rejecting a TTFA proposal when it was a proposal made by the TT Pro League. And
therefore, are we going to get a formal TTFA response to this situation? Because
all I will tell you is this. In the next couple of days, you will see that this is resolved. And when the resolution comes, you will see who is telling the truth and who is telling untruth.
Why are you so confident that it's going to be resolved?
Because Fazil, I have been intimately involved in football in Trinidad and Tobago for a long, long time. And when I use the word intimately involved, I know a lot of things that happen in Trinidad and Tobago football, and I know the history of Trinidad and Tobago football, particularly in the last 20 years. And permit me to just stray a bit. The Pro League has always been under tremendous pressure from previous administration. In 2009, 10, and 11, FIFA was giving the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association $250,000 US Fazil Mohammed to pump to improve their top league. That money was taken by the then TTFA and put in the Super League, right? How you could say that the Super League then was your highest competition when qualification for the CONCACAF Champions League was coming from the Pro League? Nobody talks about that. And I could go on record. You could call a former general secretary, and I could confirm that that was a fact. So there's a lot of disingenuous people in Trinidad and Tobago football who afraid to come out and talk. This president will talk and talk in Trinidad. This is not about the election campaign. This is about the truth.
And in relation to that, can it be argued, David John Williams, that your administration has been similarly, how should I put it, obfuscating in relation to presenting information? Because if all of this information that you're presenting now, was this in the public domain? Has all of this been in the public? Or is it the modus operandi of the TTFA to only provide information when it is seen as to be beneficial to the organization?
Fuzzy, I reject that proposal because I remember when my first interview, really, I said, this president of the administration head do not intend to conduct its business in the public domain, okay? It's take two to make a quarrel. Fuzzy, if you want to reestablish confidence in Trinidad and Tobago football, you can't be quarreling left, right, and center, right? It's difficult for me as a president to
But I hear you there, David, but given we know football is bacchanal. And as you said, we could go back more than 20 years with the issues in football. But wouldn't it have been more beneficial, even if, as you say, you have no desire to conduct things in the public domain, but by being open and transparent with all serious decisions and transactions and dealings, wouldn't that have eliminated the chance for misunderstanding?
Which one are you talking about? What is happening in 2011-12?
Generally.
Firstly, I was not president of the TTFA then. I was not president of the TTFA then.
I'm talking about
and if you talk about
during
now,
your tenure.
During my tenure, we made a press release relating to this. And that is exactly what has happened. Some people chose to spin it. And the more they continue to spin it, the more it's going to affect Trinidad and Tobago football.
As far as this particular issue, because as I said, there are a number of other things on the table, including the issue of the home of football and whether or not it's actually going to open in the first week of October. Any additional information you'd care to provide beyond what you're saying? That you said that in the next couple of days, this matter is going to be resolved, and you are satisfied that it's going to be resolved amicably?
Yes, I think it's going to be resolved amicably. Fazil, I just want to put on record. Here it is. And I want to give you some facts. Government of Trinidad and Tobago, the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, has pumped $46 million in professional football in this country. And if we can't appreciate and understand that, and the clubs can't appreciate and understand that, well, then something wrong. That does not say that the clubs have not pumped significant amount of money in professional football over the years. The respective government has seen it fit to support Trinidad and Tobago football at the professional level. There was an agreement that there's going to be a reduction over 3 years, and after that, be self-sustainable. So they're now getting $450,000 a season for zero. They're getting $450,000 a season. 8 clubs are the beneficiary of $450,000. The TTFA has said to this club, let us pool this money. We're going to take the FIFA forward money, put it into an account. Your money of $450,000 will turn into $108,000 guaranteed for 8 clubs. Police and Army will not benefit from that. However, they will benefit from a small payment, and they will also benefit from the transport costs, the marketing and all that stuff like that, which will be done by the TTFA. We are telling the TT Pro League, yes, you all can run your league, but we will provide you with the support of marketing, commercial. Let us pool our resources. So the same commercial manager that we go hire for the TTFA will work for the Pro League. It's about pooling resources and so on. What level of independence that they don't have?
Because the reference is that it appears to
TTFA,
be surrendering autonomy. By having the TTFA as a signatory, you have the final say on finances.
No, it has nothing to do with that. All we're saying is that we want to ensure that the players are being paid. That was clearly spelled out in the MOU, that the players are being paid, which will bring back confidence to the players and the league, and at the same time support the position taken by the sports company and by extension the Ministry of Sport to ensure that the players have been paid.
Let's move along in our discussion. The home of football. Last week you said confidently that you anticipate the home of football to be open in the first week of October.
Yes, we are still shooting for the first week of October, Fazir, barring any mishaps, and we feel confident that it's going to happen.
Yet you have your secretary Kamara David, I think, posting information, I think, on his Instagram account, urging people to, if they can identify any individuals who can support or provide grant funding to the TTFA to do so.
No, Fazir, again, a misunderstanding. We have 3 additional fields to put down. We don't have budget for that. Kamara David is encouraging people to come and help us. We don't have budget for 3 additional fields, Fazir. We never had the budget. But the TTFA sees it fit and necessary to have 3 additional training fields to bring it up to 6. The number of national teams that are proposed to be operated in the future of Trinidad and Tobago, 6 fields are not enough for Trinidad and Tobago. All Kamara David says is that anybody who wants to come and support the project of 3 additional fields, so be it.
So again, just for purposes of clarity, before we go to our break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the issues of women's football in Trinidad and Tobago. The appeal by your secretary has nothing to do with the actual structure.
No,
it
has absolutely nothing.
It has to do with just the 3 additional fields, which were not part of the original.
Which was not part of the, which was part of the original vision and planning, but there was no funding because the FIFA Forward program did not support that.
Before we move, David John Williams, to the issue of women's football and the accusations that have been thrown at you and your executive about disrespect and even sexism towards the women's game and showing utter disregard for the women's game. Just to close off on the home for football, I'm glad you gave that clarification as you explained that the appeal for additional funding is for the 3 additional fields for the home for football. Are there any issues right now, whether they be infrastructural, whether they be approval, whether they be matters of the electricity supply to the building and so on, that are challenges that could hamper the opening of the home for football?
There may be one challenge, Fazir, and that we are waiting the delivery of the main panel, which is 6 to 8 weeks. We got the funding for that last week from FIFA.
So we're late then?
No. So, but we have talked to the supplier and we are speeding up that, and hopefully we'll get it in the next 2 weeks. But even so, it can be opened with a generator that can power the facility. But generally, we are on course. The furniture is being delivered and manufactured as we speak. And I go publicly is that Unicoma is doing it for a tender process went through and approved by the board. Unicoma is doing that. Some of the funding was a bit late, but the TTFA has gotten the support of a lot of people, included people like Unicoma and so on, who has trusted our word to go ahead and do this. And if that is not bringing credibility back to an association that has been mired in controversy, well, I don't know what is.
Let's move along, because as I said, with every single issue, we can spend the entire morning discussing those issues. But the issue of women's football is very fundamental, especially in the modern domain, especially with so much of a movement globally towards women's sport. Yet we had that situation in July where the under-17, their game against Panama was cancelled at short notice. There were accusations from the former senior national team captain, Maylee Atin-Johnson, directed at you and indeed your executive, as again related to disrespect of women's football in Trinidad and Tobago. What is your position?
Fazir, I want to go back to the history of this administration as it relates to women football in Trinidad and Tobago. One of the pledges that I had as a president and the administration which I headed was related to women football, that we must do something for women football. Fazir, in 2016 it is, or 2017, probably 2017 into 2018, the administration took a decision that they will contract women footballers for the national team for the first time ever in the history of Trinidad and Tobago football. I think we contracted 12 or 13 players. And I seen it publicly. Those salaries range from 4,000 as the lowest to 8,000 as the highest.
Monthly salary.
Monthly salary. You take an average of 5,000 TT dollars a month, multiplied by 18 months, right? By 12 people, and tell me how much money that the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association placed in the women's program just for salaries.
Just over $1 million.
Over $1 million. Additionally, Fazir, see how many international games that the women's national team played in that 18 months, including competitive internationals. See how much. But they say that this administration did not care about women's football. Fast forward to the cancellation of the under-17 game. First and foremost, we had invited Panama. No, it was, which team couldn't make it? Curacao.
Yeah.
Curacao was invited to play here. Curacao accepted the invitation, signed the contract, and at the last moment pulled out and says that they could not make it. Not an issue. The TTFA speedily went to bring Panama in. Panama accepted the invitations. They could not get flights in because it was heavily booked. So we have had to cancel the under-17. But the TTFA moved swiftly to ensure that that same team, we kept them in camp, Fazir, for the duration of the time, and Panama had agreed to host us in sympathy of not
being able to fulfill
that obligation. And we went and played 2 international games and spent a week in Panama with the under-17 team. But they wouldn't talk about that, Fazir. In this country, good news don't sell a good story. Negative news tell a story.
Okay, so in the same way that we had that discussion last week about Dennis Lawrence and results, how do you justify your statement that the TTFA, of which you are at the helm, is committed to women's football when we see the results coming out of our women's program? And the evidence would suggest, based on the results, that our program, performance-wise, at age group level, at senior level, has regressed compared to where we were prior to you coming into office, when Trinidad and Tobago were on the verge of qualifying and just missed out by virtue of that loss to Ecuador.
Fazir, that generation of players who lost to Ecuador was something that went on for almost 15 years. And that program was started by one Marlon Charles and Jamal Shabazz. And I make no apologies for saying that. It culminated in Ecuador. At the end of the day, we did not qualify. That was the best performance of any women's program for a long time. We have to rebuild. We had 4 chances, Fazir. We had 4 chances at Bite of the Cherry. At the end of the day, we did not qualify. But you know, everybody talks about, we nearly qualify, but we didn't. Fazir, at the end of the day, we have to rebuild the women's program, right? That generation
does that
of players,
rebuilding, if I could come in, does that rebuilding means in alienating those who had taken us as far as that verge of qualification? Because there clearly appears to be a strong difference of view in relation to the executive and yourself, and individuals like Maylie Atten-Johnson, Kenya Cordner, and a few others, in their own perspective as to how women's football has been treated under your tenure.
Fazir, remember, you call some names, right? You call probably 3 names.
Yes.
You call probably 3 names.
Yeah.
You understand? You call 2. You
Yes.
call probably 2, right? But that's 2 people out of many who tend to be very vocal, and we tend to listen to that. When Caroline Morachi was here, those 2 players were suspended and dismissed by Caroline Morachi. And I will leave it at that, without the involvement of the TTFA president. So I leave it at that. They are very vocal. They are very prominent on social media. And
Is it that the others are afraid to say that they have the courage to say it because they feel independent, but the others, the vast majority, are afraid to jeopardize their futures in Trinidad and Tobago football by speaking out on their concerns?
Fazir, did David John Williams or the TTFA administration ban Kenya Corda or Maylie Atten-Johnson? They were part of the program. They were players who were offered contracts by the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. I distinctly remember. It's not now that the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association and Maylie Atten-Johnson were bumping heads, right? The first thing I did as TTFA president was to speak to Maylie Atten-Johnson. And I have texts from Maylie Atten-Johnson saying, listen, we need to forget the past and move on. You know the problem in Trinidad and Tobago football? Because Trinidad and Tobago football did not bring in Randy Waldron, who were their favorite. That's the problem. They wanted to have a hold on Trinidad and Tobago football in terms of women's football is concerned. And you know what happened? I bet you right now, Fazir Mohammed, somebody is posting what David John Williams is saying on social media to see that he's telling a lie.
And people will say all sorts of things.
But that's the nature of the beast.
We could probably spend the whole of this morning reacting to what people would have said.
And I'm not reacting to it. I'm just stating what's the fact.
Correct. We could, as I said, based on the interview last Friday, the amount of reactions that would have spun off from that, we could have spent the whole morning talking about that. But there are so many other issues on the table, and therefore, in the issue of women's football, and the feeling is that their program has been starved of funding, starved of developmental opportunities at age group performance in different regional tournaments and so on. What is your view on those accusations?
I think that's a wrong accusation, Fazir, and I want to just make a comparison. During the period when the TTFA were paying these contracted players, the men's national team, which is our flagship team, which is a team that was earning revenue for the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, they moved from getting a match fee of $1,000 and $1,500 US, and they accepted a reduced match fee for almost a year of $300 US Fazir. And I want to commend the players then at that time to being part of the struggle. And we were spending more money in women's football than what players were getting as match fees as the senior men's national team.
So, just on...
So based on that information alone, and I could bring other information in the public domain to refute what they have been saying, the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association in 2017 gave the women's program maybe $150,000 to support their league. That's when Sharon O'Brien was president of the FA. But we choose to go in the public domain and say a lot of things about Trinidad and Tobago football and women's football.
But again, just on that point, isn't the fact of the standing of women's football in Trinidad and Tobago right now, as it relates to performance in the women's league, which has just come to an end, or standing as far as our ranking at international level, or the performances of our teams at age group tournaments, and we talk about the women's game here, doesn't that suggest, David John Williams, by virtue of results, that we have actually regressed over the last 5 years?
Fazir, yes, we have regressed because the quality of players are not there, and we are rebuilding from the fact. I want to reiterate that when we just missed qualification for the Women's World Cup when Ecuador beat us,
yes,
it was the culmination of a golden generation of players, which started with Marlon Charles and and that program started when Mealy Atten-Johnson and a number of players were just tiny tots, 10, 11, 12. You know, it took us almost 10, 15 years to get to where we wanted to be. So then you want to blame an administration who have to start over from that. Most of those players have retired.
But I mean, isn't it?
So where was the planning? Where was the planning when this team was doing well? Where was the planning? Where was the succession planning when this administration took office? We did not have a team that can generally move into that team. Where was the succession plan? But you know who gets the blame? The current administration that David John Williams said, but not so much the TTFA, the head, David John Williams.
And therefore, before we reach the top of the hour, I want to take another break, and we'll continue for a few more minutes after. The issue still keeps coming up, David John Williams, that the general administration of football in Trinidad and Tobago continues to be seen as one of divisiveness, of bacchanal, lack of accountability, and inevitably leads to total confusion, which impacts upon the standard of play and the public's view of the game, the sponsors' view of the game, corporate Trinidad and Tobago's view of the game. And the argument put forward is that during your tenure, the situation has not improved.
Fazir, I want to put it in perspective, and it may have a political overtone, but it's not. What is the truth? There's a lack of accountability. I have survived 2 no confidence motions brought by certain members of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. 2 of them, and overwhelmingly so. And as a result of that, they spin it. But I want to say this, Fazir. When I grew up, I grew up in the country. Fazir. You know, it had a boy, those boys, long time used to hold water.
Yes.
The old people used to have the water and so on. And we used to go to the fields to work. But one of the old boys was kind of rusty, so he couldn't hold water. So we had one full one, and we had one empty one, Fazir. But to know it's time to come home from the field, my mother used to take a hammer, and she didn't used to pound the full one, you know. She used to pound the empty one. Put that in perspective. I say that to say,
Empty vessels make the most noise?
Fazil, you said that, I didn't say that. At the end of the day, here are people who can make a contribution to Trinidad and Tobago football, choose to be divisive about it. And I make no apologies. Brent Sancho, who is Central FC, he said that the ministry, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, is playing politics with football by not giving his team the check. I want to put in perspective. When, admittedly, he said that his team owe players. Granted, Fazir, the TT Pro League owes his team some prize money. Granted, Fazir, I put in everything in public domain. That is the same gentleman who walked away out of the board meeting. I use that analogy to say that people are politically doing things because it's politically expedient to them. That is what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. How do you run an administration? You think Trinidad and Tobago football had to have any debt, Fazir? How do you run an administration that is heavily in debt? We have had to settle 23 cases before the courts. 23 cases, Fazir. I want to bring two to your attention. We have a judgment. PTSC had a judgment against the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association for $1.5 million TT dollars for 2010 World Cup. This Trinidad and Tobago Football Association administration had a judgment against it by graphic advertising for work done for the 2010 World Cup for $1.7 million, which we have settled. Those figures were not in the books of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association when I came into office. But we have a president saying he bring the debt down to $14 million. How do you rationalize, how do you measure the performance of an administration who is trying to put some sort of stability, financial stability in the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association that will be able to run its programs in an effective way? But at the end of the day, as I said, good news does sell a good story.
And David, in the time that we have available, is there any room for reconciliation? Because based on what people say to you, about you, and what you say as well, there appears to be no room for reconciliation.
Fazir, at the end of the day, you know, a FIFA development officer spoke to me about this whole situation, and he spoke to a particular journalist, and he mentioned that, and I said verbatim, I call him the name Howard McIntosh. He spoke to that particular journalist who runs a social media newspaper, and he said to that journalist, you can imagine Keith Lecloy, you, that said journalist, and people like Anton Cornell working along with David John Williams, who's a hard-working president, where Trinidad and Tobago football could be. Finally, the amount of negative energies that has been used up in Trinidad and Tobago, if we use that for positivity, we'll be in a much better place. I want to say, for example, hear how bad it is, Fazir. I am aware that in one of our meeting of one of our members, this is what he said. This president invited all the members to visit the home of football. You know what he said in that meeting? That the TTFA president invited members to the home of football, but they have to, before they could visit the home of football, they have to sign a non-disclosure arrangement. Why would I want to have members sign a non-disclosure arrangement to visit the home of football? In that same meeting, Fazir, in order to get me out as a president, and to get the vote in favor to vote against me in a no vote campaign, a certain individual said he has information that the TTFA president is funneling the FIFA funded US dollars through a hardware. That is for another time and another place. That is libelous. How do we deal with things like that? Have you heard this president go in the public domain, and I'll say it now. You know why, Fazil, why I'm saying it now? I have reached my limit as a president, trying to do my best for Trinidad and Tobago football. And I'm not perfect. I never said that I didn't make mistakes along the way. But how do you deal with an administration when you come into office and a former general secretary was supposed to be getting $4,000 US? A former president said, yes, that it is. A former general secretary, no, said my contract was $15,000 US a month. Where are we getting the money to pay a general secretary $15,000 US a month? That general secretary was fired by the said president. And the said president, who said that his general secretary was getting $4,000 US a month, goes in a court of law and swears to affidavit that say, yes, he signed a contract for $15,000 US a month. First and foremost, where are we getting money to pay a general secretary $15,000 US a month? That is money reserved for the oil industry, right? And our association, $30 million in debt. We had administration in this country who couldn't pay Anton Cornell for 4 years. Who couldn't pay Anton Cornell for 4 years? Anton Cornell left, and we turned around and bring and employ somebody and was paying them $95,000 TT a month. Fazil, I'm sure, I don't know what you're doing in the morning in the show, you know. Come and be a director of football.
No way.
Come and be a director of football.
Why would I want to be in that jeopardy?
So I say that to say, Fazil, that this president, I have that information sitting down for the longest while, Fazil Mohammed, and I deliberately choose not to bring it in the public domain.
Are you going to use it as ammunition for the election campaign?
Fazil, what I'm talking here now, first and foremost, I never said I'm going to fight for office in 2019. That's the best kept secret. You understand?
Well, not anymore. So is it at this point, David John Williams, can you state definitively whether you're going to stand for re-election?
I haven't made that decision, Fazil, and I am being as honest as possible. I have been subjected to so much ridicule and so much attacks, Fazil. When this president took office, the first thing that happened, Fazil, within a week, we had a player strike. We had a player strike. From day one, they pelt everything at me, Fazil.
Is it because that the David John Williams, like appearing here in the public domain, in the campaigning in 2015, is a different human being and a different personality from the David John Williams at the desk of the president of the TTFA, at meetings with Pro League clubs, that you're a different person as far as attitude and willingness to listen in a discussion, and that you are more tyrannical when in that environment?
Fazil, the state of Trinidad and Tobago football requires a change in approach to what you would have believed that you wanted to do. That change in approach, for me, in my humble opinion, is for the benefit of Trinidad and Tobago football. It is going to redound to the benefit of every stakeholder in Trinidad and Tobago football. Fazil, despite
so you're agreeing with my assertion?
I agree to some point, but again, Fazil.
So you do run roughshod over people's views and opinions?
No, I don't run roughshod. I take a position that I feel is necessary for the betterment of Trinidad and Tobago.
And devil take the hindmost?
And let me say this. Fazil Mohammed, the TTFA is suggesting that the players come first to ensure that Pro League clubs pay their money. Is that a bad position to take? Is that a position that I cannot be strongly supporting?
Well, apparently not if it involves the TTFA being a signatory to the release of the funds.
And Fazil, that is what people don't like. That is what people don't like. Fazil, how do you put in perspective that this president literally begged UEFA to come to help Trinidad and Tobago football?
In what way?
In terms of administration, that's where it started. I literally went on my knees in a meeting in Miami to bring UEFA to help us, to help the professional game here. When UEFA came here, they said they're not coming back. I went and begged them because of the attitude. They said Trinidad is serious. I begged them to come back. They came back. They said they ain't coming back. I begged them a third time, Fazil. What manner of person could be doing that and saying that I anti-Trinidad and Tobago football? It is sad, Fazil.
And just very quick, this has just come to my mind because I know this is an issue as you talk about UEFA, and I'm thinking World Cup 2022. What is your position in relation to that CONCACAF dictate from a couple months ago about the going to the hex on the basis of rankings? Where are we at with that? Because
Fazil, I will speak in the appropriate forum when it comes to that, because I'm not one to speak out of turn and say that there are talks ongoing right now as it relates to that. A lot of people felt that it is not a proper position for CONCACAF to take. But we have to speak in the appropriate forum. I believe...
So it's not a done deal?
I don't think it's a done deal. I believe in my position that ranking should not dictate, and that's my own personal position. And I want to use two things to support that personal position that I am taking it to result to that. I mean, again, at the end of the day, it is something called collective responsibility. If the majority agrees with the position CONCACAF takes, we have no choice. We might differ from in that opinion, but it's something called collective responsibility. In 2020, for qualification 2014 World Cup, Mexico was the top-ranked team in CONCACAF based on FIFA rankings. Mexico only got to the World Cup through the qualification with New Zealand, and they only got a fourth-place team as a result of United States just beating Panama. They were the #1 ranked team in CONCACAF. USA was the second top-ranked team in CONCACAF based on FIFA ranking. They didn't make the FIFA World Cup in 2018. Italy, top 10. Sweden, top 15. And a number of other teams did not make...
Holland didn't make it.
Holland didn't make it neither. And we all know Holland as a top footballing nations. I say that to say that my personal position on that is rankings do not determine when it comes to World Cup qualification on the field of play. But my position on that is that I wouldn't talk outside of the forum that is needed to talk, and if there's collective responsibility, I have collective responsibility if the multitude agrees with it.
And we have just a couple of minutes left, David John Williams, and we do appreciate you taking the time both last week and this week to deal with these issues as best as we could in the limited time that we have available. But let me close off with this final question. Given all of these issues, given your expression of frustration in trying to deal with it in what you see to be the best way, even though it appears that quite a few others have a very different view, your position as far as your contribution to football in Trinidad and Tobago, do you think that you have left Trinidad and Tobago football in a better place or worse off in your time?
I wish I had more time, but in the last 2 minutes that I have available, I accept that in the societies that we live in, whether it's the United States or Trinidad and Tobago, it have mediums who are anti-Trump. It have mediums in the United States who are anti-Obama. In this country, over 250,000 people voted against the current government of Trinidad and Tobago. So I expect that. I expect that to happen in football. That's the society that we live in. But if this president, heading an administration, had paid down $11 million in debt from previous administration, still operating as an entity, the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, when we inherited, was insolvent, who had an asset base of 197,000 TT dollars, now inherits an asset base of 100 million. If that is not a step in the right direction, I don't know what is. And additionally, this administration, who inherited no financial statements from 2008 for zero, audited financial statements from 2008, has been able to produce audited financial statement every single year of its administration, get it passed at the AGM without one single change, despite all that you see in the public domain, and can deliver management accounts up to last month. If that is not proper governance and improving the fortunes of a beleaguered organization, well, I don't know what is.
David John Williams, you have to leave it there for the moment.
Pleasure.
And certainly a lot of issues